Hello everyone. So I was doing my usual weekend rounds of checking out yard sales when I spotted these three systems in somebody's garbage. I almost couldn't believe my eyes because I almost never see computers of this vintage in the trash anymore. Now back in the 90s, computer technology was advancing so quickly that your brand new computer could be almost completely obsolete in just a few years. And this rapid upgrade cycle translated to a lot of pretty decent computers being discarded pretty often. So as a young kid who was enamored with computers, trash days in Philadelphia were like a treasure hunt for my dad and I. We could bring home 3 or 4 systems every week with no effort at all almost. Well, these days that doesn't happen very much for me anymore, especially because I now live in a much smaller city. And when it does happen, they're usually boring modern computers not worth a second glance. So you can understand why I nearly wrecked my car when I laid eyes on these. These all look to be mid to late 90s or maybe early 2000s computers, but I haven't opened them up yet because I wanted to save my excitement for the video, but I can already tell they're full of goodies. But the wait is finally over, so let's tear into these. Okay, I'm going to start with this one because it seems to be the oldest of the three. And I just wanted to point out something funny. This is not actually a floppy drive. It's actually just a cover for the floppy drive bay. I've always found those pretty silly, even back in the day. And having a look around the back, we can see it's an AT system. Looks pretty well populated with peripheral cards. Got a dial-up modem here, some kind of sound card. Got our game port and serial port. And here's just a standard serial and parallel port. That's probably a breakout I/O shield for one of these other cards. And we've got some kind of video card. So let's go ahead and take this cover off and see what it's got inside. Now, in contrast to modern ATX systems, on these old ones, the entirety of the outer metal comes off. So all we have to do is slide it back and then lift it off. And fortunately, it looks pretty clean inside. It does not have a hard drive, so we're gonna have to boot it up from disk if it powers on. However, I see it's got the top drive bay cover sitting in there. However, the sound card has an audio cable for a CD-ROM drive, so it must have had a CD drive installed at some point. So let's go ahead and start clearing out these cables. Let's grab this, just an IDE cable. Let's just go ahead and pull those off. Now that's interesting. This is a VLB system. You can see how it has the extra slot on the end of the ISA slot. And that's called VLB, or VESA Local Bus. It's kinda, sort of, a precursor to PCI. It was developed to overcome the speed limitations of ISA itself. VLB would allow the peripheral card direct access to the CPU, and it was primarily developed as an answer to increased video performance. At the time, your only options were either ISA or IBM's proprietary MCA system. But while MCA was much faster than ISA, it was pretty heavily locked down by IBM. There were a lot of licensing costs associated with using it, and that really hindered adoption of MCA, which is honestly a good thing. And of course, PCI replaced all of that. But before PCI was a thing, VLB was the next best thing. So let's go ahead and start pulling some cards out. Now that's interesting. It has a, I guess that's for the hard drive LED, plugged right into the I/O card. So I'm just gonna go ahead and disconnect that. Careful to note the polarity. And I'm gonna start by removing the video card. Having a look at the back here. Oh, that's interesting. Number 9 Computer Corporation. Wow, that's funny. It's got a BBS number on it. BBS stands for Bulletin Board Service. That was kind of like the World Wide Web before HTTP. Basically, you'd set your computer to dial up to this service. It would be almost like a remote terminal. You can do things like download files and get information. Made in USA. The year marked as 1994. Alright, well, moving on. Let's go ahead and pull out that I/O board. Let's see, this little breakout shield partially connects to the I/O board. I guess this was connected to the sound card, maybe? No, that doesn't have a pin header for the game port. I guess they just had that thrown in there. So let's go ahead and disconnect that. Wow, that's really stuck in there. Looks like a pretty standard I/O board. That is interesting though. I've never seen an I/O board with the VLB connector. This capacitor here looks like it's seen better days. Nothing too interesting on the back. Let's take a look at the sound card. And it is a Sound Blaster 16 with only one IDE channel. Looks like a pretty clean card. Just gonna pull that out of there. Actually, looks like this machine doesn't have any onboard IDE. So now I can take a look at that CPU. I can tell it's a 486. Fortunately, the heatsink's not glued to it, so let's just slide that off. And, oh, whoa, it's an AMD 486. I haven't seen one of those in forever. That is an AM486 DX4, clocked at 100 megahertz. I sure hope that thing works. I'm just gonna go ahead and slide that heatsink back on. Now let's get these power connectors out of the way and have a look at the RAM. This takes the standard AT power connectors. Looks like we got a single stick of SIM RAM. This board actually takes both the 72 and 30 pin variants of the SIM modules. Let's go ahead and pull that out of there. Looks like it's a 16 megabyte module. I'm just going to go ahead and put that back in there. And it looks like the chips for the CPU cache are fully populated. And this last peripheral card is just a regular old dial-up modem. Let's go ahead and pull that out of there. Just have a look at it. Pretty densely packed circuit there. Looks like it's a 28.8K zoom modem. That thing is slow. Okay, well, let's go ahead and test this power supply to see if it's any good, and then we'll try to get this thing to boot up. So the power switches on these old AT systems actually physically disconnect the mains voltage from the power supply. So you don't need the power supply to be plugged into the motherboard in order to power it on. So I've got the power supply still disconnected from the motherboard, so we're gonna flip it on. See if we get a smoke show. Well, that fan's definitely not happy. Yeah, that fan's having issues. I wonder if that's a voltage issue or if it's just mechanically stuck. I'm gonna guess that's a mechanical problem, because it definitely didn't like when I did that. Maybe once it gets a few more revs in, it'll distribute its grease internally. Yeah, it's definitely not going well in there. Well, I guess I won't be playing Doom on this power supply. Okay, so I ended up just poking a hole in that sticker and injecting some oil into the fan bearing, and it spun right up. And that should at least last us through a test. It's either that or I just added a bunch of fuel oil for the impending fire that's about to happen. Alright, all the power supply voltage is checked out, so got it reconnected to the motherboard. Let's power it on. Well, the motherboard is definitely not happy, but it's probably just complaining because all of its peripheral cards are out. Looks like that CPU fan is not having a good time. Oh, that's real sticky. Looks like somebody already poked a hole in the sticker to get at the fan bearing. It's getting pretty warm. I wonder if I give it some oil, if it'll come back to life. Okay, well, it took quite a workout, but it did start working again. And that hole in the sticker on the top side is just incidental because the bearing is only accessible from the underside that faces the heatsink. But yeah, it's perfectly happy now. Okay, in addition to the video card, I also reinstalled the I/O board, since I'm pretty sure the motherboard probably wouldn't be too happy about missing its floppy controller. So let's go ahead and connect the monitor and see what this thing does. Alright, got the monitor connected, so let's power it on. Hey, it posted and made considerably fewer angry sounds. I think that weird buzzing in the beginning is just it counting the RAM. I think some old systems did that. Okay, well, these are pretty reasonable complaints, so I better go get a keyboard. Alright, got a keyboard, so let's run setup. Whoa, what is this? Whoa, that is crazy. This thing has a GUI BIOS. Let's see. This thing doesn't even have any PS2 mouse ports or anything. I'd have to break out a serial mouse. Let's see, what's in standard? Pretty normal stuff. So let's go ahead and set that to 1.44. Obviously we don't have any hard drives, so let's see if it'll at least attempt to boot from floppy. Save changes and exit. Okay, still complaining. Keeps taking me back to the BIOS. I might need to put a fresh CMOS battery in there. Alright, CMOS battery is just a regular old CR2032. These batteries don't tend to leak, although that screw below it is suspiciously corroded. But let's go ahead and swap it out for a fresh one. Okay, these battery terminals look a little bit funny, so I'm just going to go ahead and clean them up with the fiberglass scratch pen. Alright, fresh batteries in. Let's see what it does. Okay, that's looking better. Let's go ahead and reconfigure the CMOS. There we go. Now it's checking the disk drive. Alright, let's go ahead and insert our DOS boot disk. Hey, it's working. Yeah, this thing's working. Pretty amazing how resilient these things are. Okay, well this thing's going to need a hard drive and a CD drive, so I'm going to go ahead and put it back together and declare it a success and move on to the other systems. Okay, moving on to what looks like the second oldest system. It is unfortunately missing the turbo button, but this case is kind of beat up, so I don't know if there's any fixing or reusing it. Got a 32-speed CD-ROM drive. You can see it's also an AT system, and also has a decent complement of peripheral cards. Got some kind of video card and a LAN card, and interestingly enough has USB. We've got our PS2 connector and what looks like a bus mouse connector. It's either a bus mouse or Microsoft import. That's definitely something you don't see very often anymore. And finally some kind of sound card. Alright, let's go ahead and open this thing up. And this machine opens up the same way as the first one. Just slide it back and lift it off. Okay, I can already see you've got something nasty down there. Gross. Okay, not as clean as the other system, but close enough. At least we have a hard drive, so that's good. I wonder if that boots. And I see DIMM modules up there, so this is most likely a Pentium system. Let's try to pop that heatsink off and confirm. And yep, Intel Pentium 1. So let's go ahead and put that heatsink back on. Alright, let's pop out that sound card. Got a Sound Blaster AWE64. It's fairly clean. Very nice. Let's go ahead and remove that LAN card. Pretty basic. Most likely a 10100. And finally the video card. S3 Trio 64. Huh, just like the first system. That's interesting. It's got a IBM part number. Interesting. So we got a failed rubber band on this IDE cable. Yep, there's the remnants of what once was a rubber band. Let's pull this IDE cable out of here. And it looks like we've got two IDE channels, pretty normal. Onboard IDE. Also have the onboard floppy controller. And this machine takes both AT and ATX power connectors, so that's good. It gives me some options if that power supply is no good. I'm going to go ahead and remove power from both the drives. Alright, let's get a good look at that hard drive. Classic Western Digital Caviar 2 GB IDE drive. Let's get that back in there. And let's go ahead and unplug the power supply from the motherboard. Now the motherboard's barely in there. Now that RAM is really difficult to get to with this drive cage in the way. The drive cage is removable, but I think I can get it. And there we go. No identifying marks, but it's definitely either PC100 or PC133. Oh yeah, it says right there, PC100. No clues as to the RAM size. Let's check out the other stick. Okay, this one has even fewer identifying marks. Okay, I'm just gonna have to see what it counts up to. Let's get those back in there. And just like the previous system, this thing takes line voltage straight to the power switch. So let's power it on. Okay, the fan ramped up and then shut off. Interesting. Let's try that again. Okay, that switch is probably bad. I'm having to hold it down. Or it could just be due to the fact that that faceplate's pretty tweaked. Yeah, it does not stay on. And take that faceplate off. Okay, yeah, that's just the faceplate interfering with the switch operation. Okay, well, things seem stable. I'm gonna go ahead and do a voltage test. Alright, all the voltage is checked out good, so let's power it on. Now, unfortunately, in addition to the front panel connector being completely disconnected, these connectors have also been cut off. So we're not going to be able to rely on any post beeps to see if this thing's alive. So I'm going to have to put the video card back in at least, see if we get some activity on the screen. Before I do that, let's just see if anything on the motherboard blows up. Okay, no explosions. At least the CPU fan on this one's happy. Go ahead and put the video card back in. Alright, monitor connected, power on. Oh, it's posting. Looks like it's got 16 megs of memory. That doesn't seem right. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and shuffle around that RAM. I don't believe that RAM count. It seems awfully low for a Pentium 1. Okay, I just removed the lower RAM stick and we're still at 16 megs, so yeah, definitely got a problem with that lower stick. Okay, just went ahead and cleaned up that edge connector on the RAM stick and reseated it a couple of times, and now we're up to 50 megs. It's far more believable. Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and reconnect the hard drive and see if this thing boots. Okay, I also reconnected the CD drive because the hard drive is actually set as the slave. So let's see what it does. Alright, power on. Hard drive sounds fairly healthy. And it's detected. Oh, look at that, it's booting. It's got Windows 98 on it. But it is taking a very long time to boot. We are now at 10 minutes. It's been sitting at the Windows 98 splash screen. But the hard drive does not sound unhealthy. But that's sometimes just how it goes with Windows 98. Well, somebody definitely liked the ocean. This thing took a full 12 minutes to get to this point. Somebody was definitely heavy into the Windows theme customization. Okay, it's got an account on there. Nana. Apparently this was somebody's grandmother's computer. Well, let's see if it's got a password. No password. I guess Windows 98 has no clue what to do with this monitor. Let's just see. Close enough. And finally, about 15 minutes later, we have a desktop. Looks like there's plenty of stuff on this thing. Nana definitely liked the ocean. AOL Instant Messenger. Oh, the memories. It's even got an old version of Microsoft Word on it. Looks like it's got the full Office suite. This thing still has Nana's old documents on it, with the newest date stamp being July 2004. This machine definitely got its use. Uh-oh, MSN Messenger's popped up. One of the many things that are slowing down this computer in the background. Two gigabyte hard drive. Thing is slam full. I guess Nana wasn't too into gaming. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Yeah, it's definitely got the full Office suite on here. Let's see. Let's see how long it takes Word to open. Actually, that opened pretty quick. Sure taking its time to close. 2 minutes later, closed. Gotta see if AOL Instant Messenger opens. Yes, it does. Wow, that brings back memories. Still has the password saved in there. And lots of accounts. But apart from the terrible slowness, this machine's running perfectly fine. Uh-oh, what's this? Peer-to-peer networking. Oh, I thought it might have been Napster or something. Well, it looks like it's some form of Napster. I think we found the reason for the slowness. File sharing programs. Even has Yahoo Messenger on it. Oh man, the trouble I used to get into on old Yahoo Messenger. Okay, well, not much else on here except for what looks like some pretty personal stuff, which I'm not going to show. But hey, this machine's working. Let's go ahead and shut it down. This is going to take a while. Sure hope that scuba guy's got plenty of oxygen. He's not coming back up for a while. Alright, shut down. See how that taskbar just slowly disappeared? That is funny. I'm gonna have to edit this pretty heavily, but it took about 4 minutes to get to this point. And finally, it took about 10 minutes total to shut down. And here we have the classic sign of an AT system. It's now safe to turn off your computer. Okay, so I booted it back up because I forgot to test the CD-ROM drive. And this time, it was much faster, and the system is much more responsive. It's very strange. Another thing that's strange is it now reports an erroneous 5¼ inch floppy drive, and I didn't change any of the BIOS settings or anything, so that's weird. Okay, well, let's see if the CD-ROM drive works. Oh, it doesn't want to open. Oh, there it goes. It just needed a little bit of convincing. And that is a definite no on the CD-ROM drive working. Sounds like something's internally stuck in there, so it could probably be taken apart and freed up. But I'm not terribly desperate for IDE CD-ROM drives, so that'll be a project for much later. But yeah, this thing is much snappier now. Okay, moving right along to our final system. This is the only ATX system out of the three. Got a 44-speed CD-ROM drive. It is missing the power supply, but we've got a fair number of peripheral cards installed. And this thing is filthy. Let's go ahead and open it up. Yeah, not a whole lot going on in here. I can see it's either Pentium 2 or Pentium 3, based on it being the, they call a slocket. It's a slot/socket. And actually, I'm going to start with that because I want to see what kind of CPU that is. Looks like the other leg of that is broken off. Alright, this thing's pretty filthy also. Go ahead and get that heat sink off of there. Okay, now it's looking more like a Celeron or something. Pull it out. And it is indeed an Intel Celeron. Just go ahead and put that back in there. Alright, starting with the video card. That is an AGP video card. No marks in the front, but it looks an awful lot like an NVIDIA card. And indeed it is. TNT2 with 16 megabytes of RAM. Let's go ahead and check out the sound card. That was barely in there. And it is Sound Blaster Live. Copyright 2003. Next, let's have a look at the network card. Standard issue Realtek network card. A lot of the stuff on here has the AOpen stickers. And finally, the dial-up modem. US Robotics, most likely a 56K modem, judging by the age of the rest of the components. Pretty fancy. Okay, apparently I have intruded on somebody's home. That is a giant spider. Okay, and we just got a pile of various cables and crap here. Let's get that out of there. And apparently he's coming out for vengeance. Alright, dude, I'm gonna need you to go. Hey, at least he's a cooperative spider. Let's just get you back where you belong. Bye-bye. Okay, apart from the 8-legged horrors, there's not much else inside this machine. I see that the connectors for the front panel have also been cut on this. And here is what appears to be the other part of the CPU bracket. Well, let's take a look at the RAM. And the first stick's 32 megabytes, most likely PC100. 128 megs of RAM. And finally, 64 megs of RAM. Alright, got ATX power supply connected, so let's see if this thing will post. And post, it does not. I guess that spider was doing more in there than just being terrifying. Okay, well the CPU and the GPU are getting warm, so they're definitely getting power. I swapped around the RAM, but no change. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to swap in the video card from Nana's computer, since we know that's a known working video card, and see what it does. And we've got no love from Nana's GPU either. But you know what, that's a good thing, because that probably means the NVIDIA TNT2 card might still be good. And that's definitely worth the encounter with a giant spider. Okay, I went ahead and connected a little speaker just in case it had any beep codes I wasn't hearing. And I got nothing. Even with all the RAM removed, this motherboard is profoundly unhappy. But hey, I'm perfectly okay with that. This was definitely the system I was least interested in, and 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Okay, well I just tested the NVIDIA card in Nana's computer, and I'm happy to report that it does in fact work. I also tested all of the RAM from that computer, and it all works too. So all that spider wrangling was not in vain. Alright, so in total I ended up with 2 working systems and this lovely pile of parts here. And I'm more than happy about that, especially since I've been trying to build up my collection of systems and parts from this era. These parts are getting increasingly expensive and hard to find. In fact, I'm sure there's at least $200 to $300 worth of parts here, just based on completed eBay listings. If you like this kind of content, I'm doing things like this all the time, so be sure to subscribe. But that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.